These are the 5 aspects that, as adults, we should really understand regarding our personal finances. The first one, let's get it out of the way quickly, is just investments. There is a lot of content out there about how to invest. Regularly, this means that we want to increase our net worth in the long run, so eventually we can achieve financial freedom. So to live off of our investments, not having to work for a paycheck, just using whatever income our investments are generating, or just starting to withdraw a little bit year by year, so that these investments don't run out before we run out. The second aspect, however, is tax. It is a much more boring than talking about investments, so we hear a lot less about taxation planning. But this mainly regards not only about your tax returns from year to year, but also how is it that you can minimize the tax that you're going to pay. Are you going to do it by contributing to your retirement planning? Are you going to do it by structuring your income in certain ways? So regularly, this means that you would have to talk to a certified tax practitioner, talk to them about where your income is coming from, and they can help you structure it perhaps in a better way. Taxation planning also involves when is it that you're going to start selling your investments, what investments should you sell first, so that you again reduce the tax that you have to pay, because certain investments tend to pay more tax depending on when you bought them and what kind of income they are generating. Capital gains, for example, universally is taxed at a much lower rate than income derived from dividends or from interest, something like that. So understanding a little bit more about taxation planning can really benefit your personal finance overall. Now, the third aspect is the legal aspect. And of course, legal is an entire entity in and of itself. But talking about personal finance and financial planning, it has mainly a lot to do with how to protect your income, how to protect your sources of income. Do you need to protect it in certain way? Because sometimes certain professions require you to be insured in some way against creating some harm unintentionally, hopefully. Being protected legally is very important in this sense. Protect you from people going after your money because of certain harm that may have been created unintentionally, hopefully, which it goes without saying can actually protect your personal finance because it protects your money. Now, legal can actually be included in tax and in investments and in the following aspects as well, simply because legal is everywhere, but just think about legal as its own entity, its own aspect. It is regarding that, making sure that your income is protected, that your money is protected, sometimes even your family who may go after that. But that is a little bit more about estate planning, which is the fourth aspect that you have to keep in mind. This is not only about your will, which is very important, one of the most important things regarding estate planning, but there are also certain additional aspects to consider. So definitely you have to have a will, and again, this is very related to legal, but you have to make sure that in your will you state who is it that will be the beneficiary of your wealth and who won't. Because again, a lot of times, especially if we die without the will, even people who we didn't know could have access to our wealth go and gain access to some of it because we are not protected by our will. Certain beneficiary laws would be followed, and sometimes even foster children may have gained access to some of your wealth. So it is best to make sure that you are protected in this way, again, very related to legal, but in your will to make sure that you state who cannot, should not access your wealth and who is going to be the beneficiary, in what order, of course, establish the trustee and everything. And also regarding estate planning, you could start to consider if that is something that you need or you're interested on creating trusts for different members of your family. Like, for example, and maybe even state this in the will if you want the trust to be created only upon your death, but sometimes you can create these trusts where the trust manages certain part of your wealth, certain assets, perhaps your house, your investments, something like that, and the trust starts to pay income to the beneficiary of the trust, which may be your kids, for example. Maybe you can create a trust where your kids, if they are not yet 25, 30 years old, start to receive income from that trust without them having access to the entire money. If they are very young, they might be a little bit irresponsible if they were to receive a large sum of money and just spend it on something not very intelligently. Or you could create a trust where, I don't know, maybe your mother has the right to live in your house for as long as she lives, but as soon as she dies, then your children can get access to the house. But the children cannot access the house while your mom is still alive. So there are many ways in which you can structure your estate planning so that the people that you care about are protected from many different kinds of issues. For example, oh gosh, we've heard about so many stories about children stealing houses from their parents because their parents, loving their children, would transfer ownership of their property to their children, and children, being so mean, would kick their parents out of the house to sell that or create income, something like that. So as parents, we could create this trust in which we continue to be able to live in the house while our children are already technically legal owners, but they cannot kick us out. They cannot generate investment income from that property, things like that. So estate planning is very important. And finally, something that we may not want to think about, something that never crosses our mind, especially while we are young, is aged care. Because eventually we are gonna need to be taken care of, especially as we live longer. We may not having longer health spans. We may be having longer lifespans, but maybe we're living less healthy years and a lot more not so healthy years. So we need aged care. We need to, and this is part of your retirement planning as well, to be able to understand how much money you may have to spend when you need aged care, where are you gonna live, what requirements are there gonna be, and how much money will you have to add to your retirement planning in order to be able to cover for all of those expenses. Starting to think about this, about where is it that you would like to live, starting to do your research, maybe sometimes start to pay many years in advance so that it is easier, sometimes cheaper once you actually need the aged care, can be a very smart move. Now, this video, of course, is just to show you the 5 different aspects that you should keep in mind when it comes to your financial planning. But as always, you have to talk to a professional who can actually evaluate your personal finances, experts on tax, experts on legal, for each of the aspects that I mentioned. But all of this, very important if you want to be a responsible adult, you need all of these 5 aspects to be considered. So anyway, there you have it. Catch you guys on the next one, hopefully.